Hello, beautiful people. Welcome to the Lulu Essie podcast, where we build mental fitness, confidence, and self-love without following someone else's blueprint. This podcast is about personal growth on your terms. It's about doing the real inner work of building self-love and self-worth from the inside out. These are honest conversations about becoming who you really are, with simple tools that meet you exactly where you are. This is unedited and always from the heart. Today, I invite you to open your heart and your mind as we get into this conversation. So welcome back, beauties. And if this is your first time here, I'm so glad you found your way to this. Today is part 3 of a 3-part series on my personal experience with IV ketamine treatment for bipolar disorder. And I'd like to start today the same way I started part 1 and part 2, by being very clear that I'm not a therapist, I am not a doctor, I am not recommending this treatment to anyone. What I am is someone who has lived with severe bipolar disorder for over 30 years. And these 3 episodes are my honest, unfiltered description of what this treatment has been like for me. If anything I share calls to you, please talk to your psychiatrist, your doctor, your treatment team. Always. This is my story. It is not medical advice. In part 1, I shared the 30-year road that led me to this treatment. In part 2, I walked you through what the treatment itself actually feels like in the room, the sessions, the extraordinary awe-filled experiences of the journeys themselves. Today, I'd like to tell you what has happened after and what I found on the other side. But before I get into that, I'd like to address something directly. After episode 69 aired, some people asked me why I named the specific medications I've been on. And I'd like to answer that. I named them because specificity matters to me, because I know what it's like to be on the other side, to be sitting somewhere struggling desperately, and to hear or see something that makes you feel less alone. I remember watching Silver Linings Playbook years ago. And there was a moment where they named specifically some of the drugs that Bradley Cooper's character was on. And I was on many of those drugs. I recognized them, and something in me was moved. It wasn't information I needed. It was recognition. I felt seen in a way that a more polished, sanitized version of that story couldn't have given me. That's why I name things. That's always why. I want people to feel seen. I'd also like to clarify something my partner very rightly flagged. The ECT I mentioned in episode 69 was many years ago. By the time I was 30, I chose to no longer have ECT as part of my treatment, and it's no longer part of my current treatment picture. And finally, and most importantly, the response to episodes 69 and 70. I just don't have the words, truly. Every message, every comment, every person who shared these episodes with someone in their life moved me in ways I wasn't prepared for. The positive response is so affirming. From the very core of my heart, thank you. And I hope you'll keep sharing these episodes. It's so important because that's how we break stigma. Not with campaigns or declarations, but with one honest conversation at a time. So what's on the other side? I'm around 4.5 months in at the time of recording this, in Tokyo, of all wonderful places. And the honest answer to what's on the other side is a lot of intentional, mindful work. Because ketamine isn't a switch you flip. It's more like it opens a window in your brain. And what you do with the light that comes in is up to you. From my very first session, I was working with an integration therapist. And that's something I want to name clearly because I think it's important. The treatment and the therapy initially are designed to work together. The ketamine creates the conditions, and the integration work is how you actually build on what the medicine is making possible. And then there are the daily practices. My doctor at the clinic was very clear about this. When you're trying to anchor the neuroplasticity that ketamine supports and creates, routine is not optional. Going to bed at the same time, waking up at the same time, moving my body, breathing intentionally, nourishing myself with care. I did these things and more at the same time every day to support building my new neural pathways. These practices are not magic on their own. You already know they matter. And in this case, what we're doing here is giving the brain a sense of safety. Consistency signals safety. And when the brain feels safe, the new pathways have the best possible conditions to form and strengthen. It's like you're propping up a neurological process. This is how I think of it. And it's my language, not medical language. We can't control the neurological and chemical processes that are happening in the brain during treatment. But what we can do is things to support those processes. We can be an assistant to what's going on in our own brain. We can show up for it. And here is where the series loops back all the way back to everything this podcast has always been about. Because the ability to show up for yourself in this way, consistently, intentionally, without waiting to feel like doing it, this is the inner work. This is mental fitness. This is self-love in its most practical form. And I want to share something not as my a recommendation, but simply as my experience. During the integration period, I developed a visualization practice. I could literally feel my brain changing. It's hard to put into words, but I'll try. There was a physical, almost somatic awareness that something was shifting. And so I started actively working with that. I would visualize the neural pathways in my brain that were associated with repetitive negative thinking, the loops, the rumination, the grooves worn deep by decades of depression. And I would visualize them going dark, like lights being turned off, one by one. And then I would visualize new pathways forming, symbolized by light, new connections, new routes for my brain to travel. I would see them illumination, like lights being turned on. And I did this naturally, intuitively. It felt right. And I really believe that the brain's participation in its own healing matters. That visualization isn't just a metaphor. It's an invitation to my brain to do what it's trying to do anyway. Whether there's hard science behind what I specifically did, I honestly can't tell you. What I can tell you is that it felt true, it felt right, it felt loving, and it still does. For as long as I can remember, alongside everything else, I carried a quiet, underlying fear about what being on psychiatric medication for so long was doing. We're talking about 30 years plus, and when I looked ahead at 40 years, 50 years, there was a fear. Even when the medical professionals assured me there was no long-term damage, something inside me found that very hard to fully accept. I had watched my mom, who also suffered with severe bipolar, and I could see things. I had no clinical evidence that what I observed was medication-related, but I was scared, and I carried that fear quietly for a very long time. And I'm not saying that fear was warranted. I am saying it was real. And I imagine I'm probably not the only one who feels the fear. What this treatment has given me, among so many other things, is a sense that my brain still has the capacity to change, to form new pathways, to respond to something new. And that discovery has quietly, gently begun to dissolve the fear I didn't fully know how to name until now. You know that moment when you walk into a room and the lights are all dimmer and someone slowly turns them up? It's not flicking on a harsh overhead light. Just gradually the room gets brighter and you realize how dim it actually has been. That's the closest I can get to describing what it has felt like for me. This podcast is about having honest conversations. And in that spirit, I want to share that I am under no illusion that this treatment means I will never hit a bad patch again. That is not the promise. That is not the point. Life happens. Shit definitely happens. My brain is what it is, and I have loved it and fought with it for over 30 years. And that doesn't just disappear. Now I have a tool, an incredible, remarkable tool that I didn't have before. And that is where my hope lives. Not in the idea of never struggling again, but in the knowledge that when I do, I have something to hold on to. I can now support myself more effectively than I ever could before, and that is everything. I also want to say a huge loving thank you to the entire Ember Health team and to my amazing psychiatrist. The kindness, the sensitivity, the willingness to actually listen and open up the space for me as a participant in this journey. I get overwhelmed when I try and articulate it because I'm not sure they fully understand the magnitude of what they have given me. I hope they do. The details for Ember Health can be found in my show notes. Professionals like them make an incredible difference to people like me and to the people in my life who support me without judgment, even when they don't understand or have a clue what's going on with me. You are love personified, and I so value you. I said at the beginning of episode 69 that this series was more personal than anything I've ever shared. I meant it. And I've come to understand, sitting on the other side of the experience, is that none of it, not the self-advocacy, not the research, not the preparation, not the integration work, none of it would have been possible without the inner work that came before it. 30 years of learning to know myself, to accept myself, learning to listen to myself, and to engage in the daily, imperfect practice of loving myself. Learning to trust myself enough to say to my psychiatrist, I need this, and to mean it. Ketamine didn't replace that work. It made my brain quiet enough, receptive enough to actually do. And when I was struggling to hold on. And that is what I want to leave you with, because it's the truest thing I know. This is an inside job. It was always an inside job. If you have questions, specific things that you want me to go deeper on, please reach out. If there's enough to explore, I would love to do a follow-up episode where I address what's on your mind. You can always reach me at lulu@luluessie.com. My heart is open. You can watch this episode on my YouTube channel, and my shorts are there too. Bite-sized tools for your mental fitness, one step at a time. Please subscribe while you're there. And if something in this series has meant something to you, share it. Share it with people who live with a mental illness. Share it with someone who loves someone who struggles. Share it with anyone who has ever wondered if there's something out there they haven't tried yet. As always, what comes from the heart reaches the heart. And today, with such deep love and gratitude for every single person who has walked through this series with me. This comes straight from my heart to yours. Thank you for being here, for choosing yourself, for doing this work. I'll see you next week.